All right, let's jump right in. Today's deep dive, it's all about Brazilian wine
Brazilian wine.
and getting you up to speed.
Sounds good.
I know you want to be a Brazilian wine, like connoisseur, you've given us a ton of material.
Hmm.
Articles, notes. So we're going to go through all that history,
Yeah.
regions, the grapes,
Absolutely.
the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, it's a fascinating world, and I think there are a lot of misconceptions about Brazilian wine out there.
Yeah, and that's what we love, right?
Yeah.
Love kind of breaking those
Shattering assumptions.
shattering assumptions.
I like that.
Um, and I thought it was really interesting. You think of Brazilian wine, you immediately think of Serra Gaúcha.
You do?
But did you know that the first officially registered winery
Oh,
was actually in the Campagna Gaúcha?
interesting.
It was called J. Merriman and Fios, and it was founded
Wow.
all the way back in 1882.
That is a testament to how long this tradition has been going on in Brazil.
It really
It's often overlooked. People
Yeah.
just assume it's a recent phenomenon, but it goes
way back 16th century.
Yeah, 16th century. You can trace it back to that with the Portuguese colonization.
Yeah.
And then you had waves of immigration, particularly Italian immigrants in the 19th century, who really brought their winemaking expertise to Brazil.
And it's interesting because it's not just that they were there.
Right.
They brought specific traditions
Exactly.
with them from Italy that shaped like the character of Brazilian wine.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, for example, sparkling wine.
Sparkling wine. I mean,
Look at
that's
like Brazil.
huge influence from the Italian immigrants,
Yeah.
especially families like the Valdugas, the Sultans, the Miolos.
Right.
They brought their expertise in producing those sparkling wines that we think of with Italy, like a Prosecco. And you can see that legacy today in the quality and the popularity of Brazilian sparkling wine.
So we've got Campagna Gaúcha with its historical significance.
Yeah.
Then, of course, we have to mention Saragossa,
Of course, the big one.
the big one with the Vale dos Vinhedos.
That's just so
So beautiful.
stunning region.
And just producing tons of Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot.
For the reds,
Yeah, for the reds.
Tanit, that's right.
Big in Uruguay as well.
And for whites, Chardonnay, Riesling,
Riesling, yeah.
all the hits. But
But there's so much more.
that's just one region, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Speaking of different regions, we were talking about grapes and all that, and this is something that I found really interesting is this whole revival
Yeah.
of native Brazilian grapes.
It's a fascinating movement, because for a long time, it was all about those international varieties.
Yeah.
But now there's this rediscovery of these native grapes, and it's adding this whole other dimension to Brazilian wine.
It's like they're reclaiming their heritage.
Exactly.
Like, in a way.
Yeah, their vinicultural identity.
Like what unique flavors do they have to offer to the world
Right.
that no one else does, right? And there's one grape in particular that comes to mind when we talk about this, and that's the Isabel grape.
Oh, yeah, I've read a bit about the Isabel grape.
It's been around for centuries.
Really?
And it was actually really popular for a time, but then its popularity kind of declined.
Oh.
But now it's having this resurgence because it produces this wine with a very unique character. Some people describe it as having a foxy character.
Foxy?
Voxy.
I've never heard that used to describe a wine. What does that even mean?
It's a good question. It's a term that's often used to describe this kind of musky, earthy aroma. Sometimes a slightly sweet taste, almost a wild kind of a taste.
I see.
A little hard to describe, but it's distinctive.
So it's not just like a random descriptor. It actually tells you something about it.
It does. Yeah, it gives you a sense of what to expect. Think of it like a combination of ripe grapes mixed with this kind of earthy, almost musky scent.
Okay, so Isabel.
Isabel, the foxy grape.
Foxy grape. Okay.
I'm sure you'll come across it.
Have to try it.
Yeah. Now, I know there's another native grape that's making a comeback.
Yes.
The Bordeaux grape.
The Bordeaux grape. That's another good one.
Tell me about that.
It's known for producing wines that are a bit smoother
Smoother.
than the Isabel, with flavors of red fruits and spices.
Okay.
Maybe a little hint of pepper in there.
So Bordeaux's a little bit more
Approachable, maybe.
approachable, yeah.
Interesting.
It's a very versatile grape. It can be enjoyed on its own or blended with other varieties.
Right.
So keep an eye out for that one as well.
I will. But working with these native grapes,
Yeah,
I imagine that's got to be kind of challenging, right?
it can be.
Especially for, winemakers who are used to working with more,
The established variety.
yeah, the established varieties.
The ones that have been studied extensively.
Right.
But thankfully, there's an organization in Brazil
Okay.
called Embrapa,
Embrapa.
which is the Brazilian Agricultural Research Corporation.
Right.
And they have been instrumental in researching these native grapes. and actually developing new varieties that are better suited to Brazil's diverse climates.
So they're not just focused on, like,
hmm
the big international grapes.
They're really trying to preserve and
Yeah.
promote
Yeah.
the Brazilian heritage.
Yeah, and I think it's so interesting because, everyone thinks of wine from these certain countries, but
Yeah.
Brazil has this whole other thing to offer, and it's great that Embrapa is, like, spearheading that.
Yeah, they're doing amazing work.
Yeah. What are some of the new varieties that they've developed?
Well, there are a couple that are really showing promise. One is called BRS Violeta,
BRS Violeta.
and the other is BRS Vitoria.
Okay.
They're both bred for disease resistance,
Oh, okay.
and they're adapted to thrive in various Brazilian climates.
So it's like they're giving Brazilian winemakers a whole new palette to work with.
To work with. That's a good way of putting it.
And it's not just about the grapes themselves.
The winemaking techniques in Brazil are also evolving and becoming quite innovative.
Oh, this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah, this is where the artistry comes in.
Right.
Because you have your classic techniques, of course, crushing, pressing, fermentation, the essentials.
Mm-hmm.
But then you have these fascinating techniques that are being revived or experimented with.
Yeah.
For example, vinification in amphorae,
The clay pots.
clay pots.
I've heard of that.
It's an ancient technique, actually,
Yeah.
where they ferment the wine in these large clay vessels.
What does that do to the flavor of the wine?
Well, it adds this really interesting earthy element to the wine.
Oh.
And because clay is porous, it allows for very gentle, slow oxygenation during fermentation.
I see.
And this can result in a wine with softer tannins, a more complex flavor profile.
So it's not just a gimmick.
Yeah.
It actually affects the taste in a very specific way.
Exactly. It's a very deliberate choice by the winemaker to create a certain style of wine.
That's cool. Are there any other, like, innovative techniques that we should know about?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
There's maceration carbonic,
Okay.
which is a technique that's often used for lighter, fruitier wines, especially reds.
Okay.
It involves fermenting whole grapes in a carbon dioxide-rich environment.
And what does that do to the...
It creates wines that are bursting with fresh fruit flavors and have a slightly effervescent quality.
So that's, like, a whole other, like, category of wine.
It's a stylistic choice.
Okay. Okay.
Maceration carbonic.
Got it.
Yeah.
And I also came across this idea of co-fermentation,
Yes.
which I understand is where they blend different grape varieties together during fermentation.
During fermentation, that's the key.
Okay.
So instead of blending the wines after they've been made separately,
Mm-hmm.
they're actually fermenting those different grape varieties together in the same tank.
I can imagine that would create a completely different...
It does.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
great.
It adds complexity. It creates balance.
Hmm. So instead of, like, just mixing the paints at the end, you're
Right.
mixing them while you're painting.
Exactly.
Interesting.
That's a way to really harmonize those different flavors.
So what kind of, like, flavor profiles does that result in?
Well, it really depends on the grapes that are chosen.
Right.
For instance, you might have a grape with bright acidity that's co-fermented with a grape that's known for its richness.
Hmm.
And this creates a wine that's both refreshing and full-bodied.
It's fascinating how much goes into crafting
It is.
a bottle of wine.
It's a true art form.
And then there's also this duplipoda technique.
Duplipoda, double pruning in Portuguese.
Double pruning, okay.
That's a technique that was developed by IPAMIG, which is a research institute in Minas Gerais.
Minas Gerais.
And it allows winemakers to actually get 2 harvests in a year.
2 harvests?
2 harvests.
How is that even possible?
They prune the vines once in winter and then again in summer.
Wow.
And this kind of manipulates the grapevine cycle, forces it to produce fruit twice.
That's wild.
Yeah.
But it must be tricky to pull off.
It is. It requires a lot of expertise,
Right.
greater investment.
Yeah.
Not every winery does it,
I can imagine.
but the ones that have mastered it are producing some exceptional wines, especially these Vinos de Inverno, the winter wines.
Winter wines.
Yeah.
So what's special about the winter wines?
Well, they tend to have a more concentrated flavor profile.
Okay.
They're a bit bolder, richer, more complex,
I see.
higher tannins, a beautiful balance of acidity, deeper aromas,
So it's like the winter wines capture a different side of the grapes.
a different expression of the terroir. Absolutely.
Like a more intense expression.
Exactly.
That's really cool. Now, you mentioned Minas Gerais, and you can't talk about unique wine regions without mentioning Valle de San Francisco.
Valle de San Francisco, that's right.
I mean, how are they producing wine in a semi-arid region?
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's all thanks to the San Francisco River. which runs through the region and provides that much-needed irrigation.
So they've got like this water source
It, it,
zapping them.
it's like a lifeline for the vineyards.
Wow.
And when you combine that water with the intense sunlight that they get in that region and the fertile soil, you actually have perfect conditions for grape growing.
Okay, so it's almost like a desert oasis for wine.
It is. It is. It's a bit unexpected, but it works.
Yeah, that's what throws me off is that it's semi-arid.
Right.
But they've got this...
They've adapted.
They've got this water source.
They've got the river.
What kind of wines are they producing in Vail de San Francisco?
Quite a variety, actually.
Oh, really?
Both table wines and some very high-quality wines as well.
So it's a pretty versatile...
It is. It's a testament to the skill of the winemakers there.
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing to make wine. It's another thing to make it in a semi-arid region.
Exactly.
Are there any particular wineries from that region?
From Valle de San Francisco.
Okay.
That you should look out for. Well, you'll find some big names operating there.
Okay.
The Miolo Wine Group, for example. They have their Terra Nova winery in the region.
Oh, wow.
And then you have Vinum Sancti Benedictus, or VSB for short.
VSB, yeah.
They're focused on high-quality wines.
Okay.
They're getting a lot of attention for their approach.
So those are two good ones to start with.
Yeah, definitely.
Any others?
Keep an eye out for Rio Sol. They're doing well. And there's Botticelli as well.
Oh, Botticelli, okay.
Yeah.
I'll check it out.
Yeah, they each bring their own unique approach and style.
Yeah.
So it's interesting to compare them.
It's like each region is like a little adventure.
It is.
It's so cool. You know, we talked a little bit about this revival of native grapes. Like, what's driving that movement?
I think there are a few things at play. There's this growing appreciation for heritage,
Right.
this desire to connect with the roots of Brazilian winemaking.
I see.
You know, for a long time, it was all about those international varieties trying to emulate the wines of Europe. But now there's this recognition that, hey, Brazil has something unique to offer.
Yeah.
These native grapes have stories to tell.
Right.
They have flavors that you won't find anywhere else.
Yeah.
So it's about embracing that, celebrating what makes Brazilian wine distinct.
It's like a rediscovery of their own vinicultural identity.
Exactly.
That's a good way of putting it.
And that Isabel grape we talked about, the Foxy grape,
Right.
that's a perfect example of this.
Yeah.
It has this complex, almost wild character that you won't find in your typical Cabernet Sauvignon or Merlot.
Right.
It's truly a taste of Brazil.
Okay, now I have to try it.
You do?
It sounds like an adventure
Yep.
for the palate.
And there are others too, like that Bordeaux grape that we mentioned. That's another great example with its smoother tannins and red fruit aromas, a touch of spice.
Yeah, I'm really starting to understand why there's all this excitement around these native grapes.
Yeah, they're opening up a whole new world of flavors.
But it must be a challenge for some winemakers.
It can be, especially for those who are used to working with those more established varieties.
Like, how do you even begin to figure out how to work with these grapes?
That's where the work of Embrapa is so crucial.
Right.
They're not only researching and documenting these native grapes, but they're also developing new varieties that are disease-resistant, better suited to Brazil's diverse climates.
Yeah.
So they're ensuring that these unique flavors have a future.
So they're not just like preserving the past.
Right.
They're also looking ahead to the future.
Exactly. They're the guardians of Brazilian wine's heritage.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah, they're paving the way for future generations of winemakers.
Well, speaking of the future, we should talk about how wineries in Brazil are incorporating sustainability into their practices and, you know, this whole rise of enoturism.
Oh, absolutely. That's a big part of the story.
So let's dive into that
Let's do it.
after a quick break.
Yeah, it's really impressive to see how sustainability has become so deeply ingrained in Brazilian winemaking.
Yeah, as I was going through all this stuff, it seems like it's not just a trend.
No,
It's a genuine commitment to preserving the environment.
it is.
It seems like they're approaching it from a holistic perspective, like, you know, from the vineyards to the winery,
Absolutely.
and even extending to the communities around them.
It's about recognizing that great wine starts with a healthy environment.
It's all connected.
Exactly.
And this respect for the environment seems to be going hand in hand with the growth of enoturism.
Oh, absolutely.
More and more people want to experience Brazilian wine where it's made.
It makes sense, doesn't it?
It does.
You know, Brazil has such incredible natural beauty, rich history, welcoming culture.
Mm-hmm.
And you combine that with the world of wine, it's a recipe for an unforgettable experience.
Earlier, we mentioned the Trem dos Pampas in the Campagna Gaúcha,
Yeah, the wine train.
the wine train. What other unique enoturism experiences does Brazil offer?
Oh, there are so many.
Really?
In the Vale dos Vinhedos, for example. You can explore vineyards by bike, on horseback, or even take a hot air balloon ride over the rolling hills.
Wow.
Imagine sipping a crisp Brazilian sparkling wine
Oh my
as
gosh,
you soar above those vineyards.
that sounds magical.
That's pretty spectacular.
Well, before we all book flights to Brazil,
Yeah,
let's take a step back for a second and just recap what we've learned so far about Brazilian wine because it's been a lot.
it has been a journey.
Yeah.
We started by debunking that myth that Brazilian wine is all about Serra Gaúcha.
Hmm.
We uncovered this rich history, this diverse landscape of wine regions,
Right.
each with its own unique character.
We've got the historical significance of Campagna Gaúcha,
Mm,
the iconic Vale dos Vinhedos in Serra Gaúcha.
right, with its stunning beauty and its abundance of those classic grape varieties.
And then we went beyond those well-known regions.
Yeah, we ventured off the beaten path
Yeah, to places like Minas Greece.
with its innovative dupla poda technique and those intriguing winter wine,
Right. And the unexpected oasis of Valle de San Francisco.
proving that you can make great wine even in a semi-arid region.
It's amazing how they've adapted to those conditions.
It is.
It's like they're not limited by anything.
They're pushing the boundaries.
Yeah. We also dove into this exciting resurgence of native Brazilian grapes.
Ah, yes. The Isabel and the Bordeaux, those unique flavors that are capturing the world's attention.
And we can't forget about all the innovative techniques Brazilian winemakers are using.
From those ancient amphorae to the modern marvel of double pruning, they're not afraid to experiment.
Yeah, it's like they're constantly pushing the boundaries
I'll
of
say
what's
it.
possible in winemaking.
They're creating wines with distinct personalities, wines that tell a story.
And let's not forget their commitment to sustainability.
Absolutely. It's woven into the very fabric of Brazilian winemaking.
They understand that a healthy environment
Hmm.
is essential for producing great wine.
It's a holistic approach.
Well, with all this innovation and growth, what do you think the future holds for Brazilian wine?
The future is bright. I think we're going to see Brazilian wines gaining even more recognition on the international stage.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. They're poised to make a big splash with their quality, those unique flavors we talked about, and their commitment to sustainability. I think they're really going to capture the attention of wine lovers worldwide.
So for those of us who are eager to explore this world of Brazilian wine,
Yeah.
what advice would you give us? What should we be looking for?
Be adventurous.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to try new varieties and blends. Look for those labels that are showcasing those native grapes like the Isabel or the Bordeaux.
Okay.
And when you find a bottle of Brazilian wine, take your time.
Yeah.
Savor it. Think about its journey from vine to glass, the history, the terroir, the passion of the people who created it.
That's great advice.
It's about the experience.
Yeah.
It's not just about drinking wine. It's about experiencing it, appreciating the artistry and the story behind every bottle.
Well, I have to say, this deep dive has been incredibly inspiring. I'm ready to book that flight to the Vale dos Vinhedos.
Do it. You won't regret it.
Mhm.
It's really fascinating how wineries in Brazil are weaving sustainability into the very fabric of their operations. It's not just a trend. It's a genuine commitment to preserving the land and its resources for future generations.
It seems like from the vineyards to the winery and even extending to the surrounding communities, they're approaching winemaking with this holistic mindset.
Exactly. They're using renewable energy sources, implementing water conservation measures, and promoting biodiversity in their vineyards. It's about recognizing that great wine starts with a healthy environment.
It's all connected. And it seems this respect for the environment is going hand in hand with this surge in enoturism. More and more people want to experience the world of Brazilian wine firsthand.
It's a perfect pairing. Brazil has such incredible natural beauty, rich history, welcoming culture. Wine enthusiasts are flocking to regions like the Vale dos Vinhedos for more than just a taste of the wine. They're seeking that immersive experience.
We talked about the Trem das Pampas earlier, the wine train and the Campagna Gaúcha. What other unique enoturism experiences does Brazil offer?
Oh, there's so many. In the Vale dos Vinhedos, for example, you can explore vineyards by bike on horseback, or even soar above the rolling hills in a hot air balloon.
Wow.
Imagine sipping a crisp Brazilian sparkling wine while taking in those panoramic views.
That sounds magical.
Pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
So before we get lost in daydreams of vineyard adventures, let's take a moment to recap all the amazing things we've learned about Brazilian wine. It's been quite a journey.
It really has. Where do we even begin?
Well, we started by debunking that myth that Brazilian wine is all about Serra Gaúcha. uncovering a rich history and a diverse landscape of wine regions.
We explored the resurgence of native grapes like Isabelle and Bordeaux with their unique flavors and cultural significance. And let's not forget about all the innovative techniques Brazilian winemakers are using, from ancient amphorae to modern double pruning. They're really pushing the boundaries of winemaking and creating wines with distinct personalities.
We even discovered how Brazilian winemakers are embracing sustainable practices, recognizing the interconnectedness of great wine, a healthy environment, and thriving communities.
It's been an eye-opening deep dive. With all this innovation and growth, what does the future hold for Brazilian wine?
Well, I think we can expect to see Brazilian wines gaining even more recognition on the international stage.
Really?
Oh yeah, with their dedication to quality, unique flavors, and commitment to sustainability, they're poised to capture the attention of wine lovers worldwide.
So for those of us who are eager to explore the world of Brazilian wine, what advice would you give? What should we be looking for?
Be adventurous.
Hmm.
Don't hesitate to try new varieties and blends. Look for those exciting labels showcasing native grapes like Isabel or Bordeaux. And when you find a bottle of Brazilian wine, savor it. Think about its journey from vine to glass, the history, the terroir, the passion of the people who created it.
It's not just about drinking wine, it's about experiencing it, appreciating the artistry and the story behind every bottle.
And remember, there's always more to discover. The world of Brazilian wine is vast and constantly evolving. So keep exploring, keep tasting, and keep your palate open to new adventures.
This deep dive has left me incredibly inspired to explore all that Brazilian wine has to offer. I think I'm ready to book that flight to Vale dos Vinhedos.
Do it, you won't regret it. And as you embark on your Brazilian wine adventure, here's a question to ponder. If you could choose just one Brazilian wine region to visit, which one would you choose and why? Let us know. Until next time, cheers to the joy of discovery.